For almost 40 years now, the Transformers have evolved into one of the world's biggest franchises, with hundreds if not thousands of characters, and therefore hundreds if not thousands of voices. Sometimes they are new, unique characters, and either we become attached to them or we reject them. Sometimes it's the same character, revisioned, changed, altered in some way, and sometimes that lands and sometimes it doesn't. Last week we looked at the top 10, as voted on by fans, best match of Transformers voice actor to their animation model, right? They really fit the character. Today, again, as voted on by fans, we're going to look at the top 10 worst cast choices. The top 10 Transformers voices that do not match the animation. Top 10 worst voices. That's our focus this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey all, welcome back to the channel. I am your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe, and while you are at it, light them up, baby. Hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton, and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links. All of that, man, is in the description down below. Also in the description down below, and if you're in a position to help the channel to grow, use the donate link, check us out on Patreon, see what we have to offer to you through spring, or of course hit the join button at any given time, man, and become a channel member. Of course, this was voted on by fans all across social media, and I think it was a bit of a challenging one this week. Because I think a lot of people didn't know which one to pick. Either you love a lot of voices or you really, really detest a lot of voices. And I had a couple of people, man, I wish people would stop this. Like I had this one dude who put up a picture. Now, pictures don't count. Saying more than one name doesn't count. It's been that way for 4 years. And this dude put up, he was like, it's a joke about something from The Simpsons. And I'm not gonna lie, I haven't watched The Simpsons in 20 or 25 years. I didn't get the joke. I didn't know what he was talking about. It was a complete and utter waste of time. And the guy said that I had an attitude problem. We all know I got an attitude problem. That's nothing new. But he said, like, so few vote on it here. Dude, do you realize, like, about 1,000 people typically vote on this every week? I don't, when I constantly have to kind of explain stuff over and over, man, it gets frustrating. People, most people know this by now. Most people are great about it. But every now and again, you got that one dude. You got that one dude who just can't admit that they couldn't follow the rules or didn't follow the rules. I digress. Top 10 worst match of voice-to-voice animation. To the actor, to the look of the character, or the characterization of the character, man, it just does not match. Sometimes it's a new character that doesn't make sense. Sometimes it's a character that we know and has a certain personality and sound and cadence to a voice that's really established, and this is way at the left field, and it just doesn't land. Our honorable mentions include G1 Onslaught, which I thought was an interesting one. I always liked his voice, but the few people who voted for him basically said he sounds too refined for somebody who would be so militaristic. They expected him to have a gruffer voice. I don't know, I always thought that his voice matched, but again, this isn't about me, this is about what you guys vote for. Beast Wars Quick Strike, I'm not gonna lie, I always felt like his very deep country twang, he came across like a cowboy, like a, I don't know, like a dastardly cowboy, but like that's not how I pictured him, or that's not how I envisioned him myself. So I understand that one, but it's obviously grown on me over the years to now that's how I think of Quick Strike. Cyberverse Cheetor, I thought that was an interesting one. And G1 Tripticon. Of course, voiced by Brad Garrett. I'm surprised with that one too. I always sort of found like his almost like gruff, yelling kind of speech. Like him being a T-Rex, I found it matched, but I'd be very interested to know, people that didn't think it matched, I'd be very interested to know who they think would be a better match. I think that'd be really interesting to know. None of them made the list. You know who did? Well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do as we always do, and we're going to kick things off with number 10 up first. Number 10 takes us to the somewhat controversial Netflix War for Cybertron trilogy and Kaiser Johnson's Ironhide. So Kaiser Johnson done the voice of Ironhide. I think it was also Albert Wesker in like a video game of reboot or something of Resident Evil. But as Ironhide, as did a lot of people, found his voice to be kind of too high, too young, too inexperienced. It just, I don't know, it sounded too generic. Some people said it should have been switched with Hound. I don't really agree with that either. I don't think the voice really fit Hound. I feel like maybe it could have fit Bumblebee, you know, or some other young bot. But when you expect the gruff, the rough and tumble and experienced Ironhide, whether it be like the G1 or even the Bayverse, like some version of Ironhide that is strong, and you get that kind of, you know, very young sounding, very inexperienced sounding, somewhat nervous sounding voice of Kaiser Johnson. Nothing against the guy, but it didn't really fit Ironhide. And enough fans felt the same way that his iteration of Ironhide took the number 10 slot. Number 9 is a character that is the only character that I'm going to show in his alt mode, because this is the only character whose voice, well, actually isn't a voice, by way of Bumblebee, specifically the live action universe Bumblebee with his bleeps and bloops. To be fair, the Transformers Prime iteration also had some votes, but the live action version was the one that had the most. Whether you want to think of it as the live action, or if you prefer to slot Prime in here, even though it's not the official entry, it's Baby, right? Baby Bloops. That's what you know what? If I haven't done it already, that's what I'm putting up as the number 9 slot. Baby Bloops. But yeah, it's that radio talk, it's that bleep bloop, it's the sounds coming from the radio and whatnot. Like, either fans liked it or they didn't. I mean, I grew up personally with Bumblebee having a voice, and when that changed and he was just the radio talk, it didn't land with me. But I understand that there's an entire generation now that associate Bumblebee with that type of speech pattern and find it strange when he actually has a voice. It's so weird, but it very much goes to show how influenced we are based on the time that we enter the fandom. Yeah, Bayverse Bumblebee and all of his bleeps, bloops, and radio talk takes the number 9 slot. I find number 8 to be very interesting because it didn't really strike me that this might be bad casting at first. It takes us back to the Machinima series for the Prime Wars trilogy. Remember that? And this guy, Overlord, by Patrick, what's his name? Patrick Seitz. I hope I'm saying his name right. S-E-I-T-Z. And his iteration of Overlord, who was kind of presented as like a southern con man. Like, he had that southern drawl and he moved slow, but like, he feared nothing. He had no concern of anyone. He was fine to come in and just be threatening. I get what they were going for with that characterization. Personally, I thought that the voice for this character should have been lower, gruffer, more menacing, but that's just me. There are people who have even heard my iteration of the voice for this guy in Universal Collision and say, yeah, that's Overlord. A lot of people go back to G1 and say it should have been some variant on the Japanese voice actors, maybe, arguably. And there's some who, very interestingly, said that they expected him to sound more like, get this, Joker. I think in that case, a lot of them are basing his personification on sort of his maniacal comic book iteration. A Joker-esque take on Overlord would have been very interesting. But while I understand where the Southern con man came from, I also understand that it was a bit of a creative departure based on the previously known characterization for Overlord. Yeah, it was a creative choice, it was a risk, and for a lot of people, enough people, it didn't land, and it secured this guy at the number 8 slot. Number 7 once again takes us back to the Netflix War for Cybertron trilogy, and a little bit of Beast Wars here by way of Tigatron. Bo Marie's Tigatron. Not Tigertron, Tigatron. A lot of people said he should have been Dinobot. I gotta be honest with you, I've heard the voice and whatnot, and I know it. I don't think it matches for Tigatron. I also don't think it at all matches for Dinobot. I don't know why people say that. It's, if anything, I feel like maybe he could have voiced, I don't know, maybe Lockdown. Maybe he could have had a Lockdown voice because he has sort of that gravelly voice. When I hear Tigatron, of course I think of the original Beast Wars, where he's very much presented as like a peace-loving character, a calm character, mostly anyway. A very wise character, one who listens more than he speaks. And this new iteration is obviously a much younger iteration of Tigatron, but he seems hardened and gruff, and I don't know if that really matches the personification that we all know for the character. Yes, even back in Beast Wars he was somewhat hardened, but it was because he had sort of seen the value of the animals more than a war. He had found some measure of inner peace being by himself. And it was a very different take. In the War for Cybertron iteration, he comes across as just another bot, just another voice, and just another soldier. Maybe that's why people associate him with Dinobot, because Dinobot saw himself a lot the same way. I don't know. I don't think the casting was right for Dinobot. I don't think the casting was right for this guy. I don't think switching them around would have helped. I just don't think that they really fit for the characters that we know and love. Nice try, but Tigatron takes the number 7 slot. Now this one surprised me a little bit. At number 6 we have Jason Marnocha and Siege Megatron, or the Netflix War for Cybertron Megatron. So Jason, I don't know if his name is pronounced Marnocha or if I'm saying it wrong. I hope I'm saying it right. But he was the voice of Megatron, of course, and a lot of people said he was just too slow. I think that you're missing the whole point here, personally. I thought he was okay. I thought it felt like a Megatron that was tired and worn, and the burden of leadership was really kind of weighing on him, and he was tired, and he was to the point like, man, I'm going to have to make some hard choices, some things I don't want to do because, you know, we're running out of energon and things aren't going that good, but I don't want to present myself as weak. Could the cadence and the speed have been upped? Yeah, probably, and a lot of times when he talks, it's as though his teeth are grit. And if you're under that much stress of leadership, maybe your teeth would be grit. I feel like it was a departure while also being a little bit of an homage to Frank Welker in G1. I feel like it is recognizable as a similar sort of Megatron voice, but I also understand why some people might think that it was too slowed down. I look at the slowed down nature of it and I justify it because of the circumstances that the character finds himself under when I put myself in the character's shoes. But just as a fan watching from the outside, yeah, maybe Megatron should have had a higher speed to his voice. Personally, I enjoyed the fact that he wasn't presented as like a, you know, cartoon villain of the week, twisting his mustache. He had a sense of gravitas and gravity to his voice. But that's just me. Unfortunately, taking that creative departure really turned off a lot of fans. Enough of them that this iteration, the Siege Megatron, takes the number 6 slot. And now a hush falls over the crowd. We have reached the ever-coveted, ever-popular halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, we go back to G1. That's right, G1 Season 3 and Frank Welker's Galvatron. A lot of people say that they not only prefer the Leonard Nimoy Galvatron, but the whole cadence and the whole way the character presented himself there was better. He presented himself as threatening. He presented himself as still ruling the Decepticons with an iron fist. He presented himself as a menacing threat. However, by the end of that movie, of course, we all know he takes his lava bath, and when he wakes up from that, in the actual series, of course, he was not voiced then by Leonard Nimoy, he was voiced by Frank Welker. Welker, realizing he was not going to be able to pull off the more gravelly take that Leonard Nimoy did, opted for his own take, a more villain of the week, sort of cackling, maniacal, I'm a bad guy type of voice for Galvatron. And the whole justification for why Galvatron sounded like this was that the lava had made him crazy and kind of, I guess, burned out some of his cerebral circuits, whatever. And it affected his voice patterns and, of course, his sanity. While I think it's great that maybe they made him a little more crazy and a little more wild, I do think it hurt the character because it took away from that sense of he's an effective leader. We all know that really it was Cyclonus who came across and felt like the more effective leader, with Galvatron really just serving as a figurehead and a little bit of a psychotic at the very tippy top that you didn't want to kind of make angry. Galvatron was to the Decepticons as the maniacal Serpentor was to Cobra. Frank Welker did his best. He tried to adapt his voice. He didn't want to sound like the same old Megatron, but he knew he couldn't sound like Leonard Nimoy. He took his own take, and for some people, it's still the iconic sound for the character, and for others, it just didn't land, and it really washed down what Transformers Season 3 G1 could have been. Who knew that we wouldn't like a voice from Frank Welker himself? Nevertheless, his iteration of G1 Galvatron takes the number 5 slot. Coming at number 4, we go with Charlie Guzman, or Dashy, I think is his social media name, and his iteration of Combiner Wars Menasor. Yes, I have a Combiner foot that's after falling out here. I thought I had it. Oh well. When I picked him up, it is what it is. I still prefer my customized version of Menasor better than the Legacy one. A lot of people prefer the Legacy. I get it. I just prefer this one better. Not the stock one. I did a lot of work on the torso here. Nevertheless, I digress. The voice of this guy in Combiner Wars, as soon as I heard it, I was like, no. It sounds nothing like Menasor should be. He just sounds angry, raging, dumb. He sounds like he's trying to pull off a bunch of one-liners and not effectively. Maybe it matched some other Combiner, but it definitely didn't match Menasor. Menasor, I expect a gruffer, more serious. I think it's like a Russian accent he had. He had some sort of an accent, but definitely more grainy and gritty and threatening. This sounded too thuggish for my taste. Maybe you liked it, but a lot of fans didn't. They said he does not homage G1 Menasor, and it's fine. Try and make it your own, but in trying to make it your own, it just didn't land. He didn't come across as threatening enough. He just came across as a generic Decepticon, and when he got taken out, it was like, wow, that was pretty unceremonious. He didn't last long enough for a character, a Combiner, that many consider to be their favorite Combiner. To change his voice and water down his character to that degree was a real shame, and enough fans feel that way that Combiner Wars Menasor takes the number 4 slot. Coming in at number 3, we have Matt Hill and this guy. That's right, Energon Ironhide. I detest everything about this character. I detest the look. I detest the fact that nothing about the look of it screams Ironhide at all. I detest the voice because nothing against Hill, but like it's obviously not a good take on Ironhide. Now don't get me wrong, people will say, this is a whole different universe. It's a much younger, inexperienced Ironhide. I don't like Kicker either. I didn't like Ironhide, I didn't like Kicker. Ironhide is like following Kicker around like a lost animal or a lost puppy, and Kicker is just a garbage human being. Just both characters just awful. Like, I don't think they're written well. I don't think they're characterized well, and therefore you can try to voice as well as you want. It's not gonna go good because everything about their existence isn't good, you know? When most people think of Ironhide, and I think it's the same complaint that we had at number 10, people think of something gruffer, grittier, something that has more experience, a guy who is a skilled warrior and combatant. This Ironhide, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's over enthusiastic. He sounds like a surfer dude, if anything. Like, I hear this Ironhide and I'm like, dude, go and hang out with Bill and Ted and have yourself one excellent adventure, because I can't take you seriously. I would never in a billion years recruit him to come in to battle with me, because I feel like he'd be taken out right away and serve absolutely no purpose. That's just me. However, as I say all of that, those are all a plethora of the exact same reasons that fans who voted for Energon Ironhide gave. They said he wasn't gritty enough. He wasn't experienced enough. He wasn't the Ironhide we know and love. Nice try at making a young version your own, but it just comes off as an inexperienced kid that you wouldn't dare take into a war. And for that reason, Energon Ironhide takes the number 3 slot. Coming in at number 2, we go back once again to the Netflix War for Cybertron trilogy. Man, a lot of people didn't like the voice acting there. I didn't mind it. But a lot of people did not like Jake Fushi's take on Optimus Prime. Again, I didn't mind it. A lot of people that done this said it's not Peter Cullen. It's not. However, we do need to realize that there are times that we're going to have to accept somebody else as the voice actor. And I think that Jake's voice is low enough that you can see a certain homage to Peter, but I do find that he loses it when he tries to kind of yell and really sort of like up his voice to a higher register, and I find sometimes he loses it with the way he actually pronounces certain words. Nevertheless, while it's an adaptation, we as fans need to realize that the great Peter Cullen is only going to be able to go on for so long. And as I listen to other actors attempt Optimus Prime now, I ask myself, do I feel like that this is a version of the voice I could get behind? I could with Jake, but a lot of people said, no, he's too slow. It's only when he's speaking very slowly that he sounds anything at all like Optimus. And even then, it's somewhat slight. And they didn't like, I think, the overall take of Optimus in that series. But you have to remember that the Optimus that was in the War for Cybertron trilogy is not the Optimus that we all know and love. He is not a seasoned, experienced leader who's confident in his abilities. He's actually a younger, inexperienced leader who's very not confident in his abilities and not really sure what he's doing. I think Jake tried to encapsulate that part of a younger Optimus Prime, and I don't think it necessarily landed. A lot of people said, though, that they've heard him voice Optimus in other things. I think he might have done Optimus in Cyberverse, if I'm not mistaken, and they liked him there, but didn't like him in the Netflix trilogy. Maybe that says something about the voice acting director, right? And the direction that they took. Nevertheless, enough fans felt that in terms of the War for Cybertron Netflix Optimus Prime, Fushi's version just didn't land, and he takes the number 2 slot. And now here we are, the very tippy top, number 1, and at number 1 across all of Transformers, all iterations of the fiction, all the voice actors, all the characters, this one clearly, by far, took number 1 as the worst casting choice, the worst match of actor to animation that Transformers has ever done, and they've done some stinkers. This again takes us back to the War for Cybertron Netflix trilogy, the Kingdom section specifically, and their take on Beast Wars Megatron. Yes, it is not David Kaye. It is not the iconic voice with the air of class, but also that, you know, iconic yes, and the whole cadence and the way he says words and the I guess the air of leadership that he had. No, this version was voiced by, I want to make sure I say his name right, Marquise Bobesch. I hope I'm saying his name right. And his version is a lot gruffer, a lot angrier. It sounds more like a Dinobot. It certainly isn't as intelligent. It sounds more chaotic. It sounds more he isn't going to have the finesse that we associate with Beast Wars Megatron. He is going to have the brutality, but it's not going to be tempered by the intellect and the finesse. It's just going to be the lumbering brutality. I hear his voice, and it's applied to a T-Rex, but I feel like it would have matched better maybe for a Grimlock than for Beast Wars Megatron. It fell absolutely flat for me and for everyone else. We were anxiously anticipating the addition of this guy to that series, and when it happened, it just plain didn't work. Nothing against the actor. He certainly did his best, and I'm sure he followed the voice direction that he was given. But he never should have been put in the position of Beast Wars Megatron to begin with, and for that reason he takes the number 1 slot. And there you go, 10 down to 1 once again. Other ones that had votes: G1 Omega Supreme, G1 Thundercracker, Omar Sy's Hot Rod. I don't know who Omar Sy is, so I'm not sure which Hot Rod that is. Is that the Last Night version? I'm not 100% sure, I'm not going to lie. Beast Wars Scorponok, Bayverse Blitzwing, G1 Mirage, 07 Jazz. Nice try, Darius. Nice try. Netflix Galvatron. Who else do we have here? As I'm looking down through. G1 Superion. I kind of get that one. For a bunch of planes, he sounded really kind of gruff. Earthspark Grimlock. Not wild enough, people said. Not wild enough. I thought that was interesting. Gary Chalk as Optimus Prime, because he's so iconically related to Optimus Primal. Ron Perlman's Optimus Prime. Rise of the Beast Stratosphere, yeah, he had a bit of a weird voice. The one I would have voted for, had I voted, Cybertron Metroplex. I'm not sure what his accent is. I don't know if it's Welsh or Scottish or Irish, and I'm fine with the accent if the voice itself was lower and the cadence was slowed down, because he's gigantic. It just, I don't know, it seemed like the voice was for the wrong size bot. At least it did for me. Alpha Q. I think that was Trevor Duvall, if I'm not mistaken. Who else do we have here? Prime Wars Windblade, Beast Wars Pterosaur, Cyberverse Bumblebee, G1 Wheelie, G1 Skids. I thought that was an interesting one. Bumblebee Wheeljack. And just for giggles, let's say, I thought this one was interesting, G1 Hot Rod, specifically Judd's attempt at it in the 86 movie. Who would have expected that Judd would appear on this list of worst matches of actor to animation? Anyway, there you go. 10 down to 1 and some honorable mentions and a few others there at the end. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course, hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. While you're at it, please hit the subscribe button. Stick around, man. Have some fun with us here on the channel. And don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single solitary day, you right there, you do make a difference in the world. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights, at the stop motion premieres, or the old fashioned way right here inside the videos.